Hello, and welcome to Madmen's Knowledge, a podcast where we answer questions no one is asking and argue about things no one cares about in order to grant you insight. Insight as to what? We don't know, but here we are. We're your hosts, the Madmen in question, Griffin and Hain. Our topic of discussion for today is the trolley problem and the variations of this famous thought experiment.
Cool. Uh, so I think we're gonna begin here with the original trolley problem, uh, as invented by Philippia Foot. I swear to God, I don't know how to pronounce that name any better. Uh, anyway, the problem is a trolley is going down a track with 5 people on it and will hit them unless you pull the switch to change the direction to another track. However, there's one person on the second track that will die if you do pull the switch. You know, the dilemma here, we could get into that, but it's pretty basic as of, do you kill 5 people or do you kill 1? The original problem was invented in 1967 as part of an analysis on abortion debates and the doctrine of double effects, which is something that I did not know. So, there you go.
And so
Now,
obviously, with this thought experiment having been made, there are going to be some deviations where you may have heard a couple of them, but there are certain permutations and mutations of this where they try to nail down exactly how many people's lives outweigh others. So, for instance, the same problem, 5 people on one track, one on the other, but the 5 people are of perceived more importance than the one person, or the one person has personal relevance to you. Like for instance, a spouse or a child on the track with one. And so it's all just an analysis of how far you are willing to go morally to save people and analyze your thought process of how many people's lives is a certain person's life worth.
which is, a little fucked up, just
I
to
mean,
put a
I
price on
mean,
anybody's head,
yeah,
but,
but
but, realistically, people do it, even if you don't want to admit it. It's a thing.
yeah,
Anyway, the other thing that's interesting about this is, do you put yourself in a situation where you are taking action and directly affecting the result versus are you a passive bystander? So, like in the original situation, it's headed towards 5 people, and if you pull the switch, you're saving, it's a net gain of 4 lives by you pulling the switch, but that one person that you've killed is you are directly responsible for their death. And so how do you respond to things like that? Like, would you be willing and able to act in those situations?
and to
But
take that further,
mhm,
there is the doctrine of direct action. There is the fat man variation of this trolley problem, which, when upon seeing that almost everybody, the general response to the trolley problem is that most people will pull the switch and doom the one person to save 5. Upon seeing this, some really fun moral philosophers decided that it wasn't good enough, and so they modified it to say that in order to stop the trolley, you have to hurl a fat man off of the bridge, like off of an observation platform, to have him stop the train by being run over by it, thereby making you directly implicated, like you are actually killing someone with your actions rather than just pressing a button or pulling a switch.
yeah. And before we start dissecting and giving our opinions on this, the one of the biggest criticisms of the trolley problem in general is that, one, it's not a very realistic scenario for real life. But then two, uh, you can't predict how you're going to act in a real life scenario, like faced with these consequences. As much as I'd like to say that I would do a certain thing, you know, life or death, it comes down to it, it's thrown in front of me. I don't actually know how I'd react in the panic state. I'm a little bit of a dumbass.
I am all but certain that no matter what, faced with the trolley problem, I would pull the lever. At least in the standard one.
In the
And I'm
standard one, I'd absolutely pull the lever.
assuming it's random people. Once you start messing with, like, personal people, like, if there's a person who is directly relevant to me as the one who is gonna sacrifice themselves for 5 people, I don't think that I would pull the lever to kill them. Um, my thought there is that 5 people are probably going to, like, the 5 people, there's got to be somebody else there saving them, and I can worry about the one person.
I see.
Now, the other thing that does mess with it is again, in the doctrine of direct action, it makes it easier for me to make that decision when the trolley is headed towards 5 people.
Oh yeah.
It would be because it's enough for me to say, oh, I didn't see the lever, or oh, it was already on its way and I was worried about saving this one person because they're personal to me. And I don't think I can be blamed for that. When it starts to become a problem is when the train is headed towards somebody that you care about and you have to kill other people to
Yeah,
save that
that's
person.
what I was about to bring up anyway. But yeah, no, it's like, so like the question is like, Griffin, if I was, the one other, if there was the 5 people on one track and I was on the other one, would you pull the lever to kill me? I'm pretty confident that you wouldn't kill me.
I would
Uh,
not.
but if I were on the track and the trolley was going to hit me, and then you had to switch it to the other 5, then it's like, I don't know if I want you to do that.
And I
If
don't
you know
think
what
that
I
I
mean.
would. In
Yeah.
that situation, I'm pretty sure I just resign to the fact that the trolley is headed towards you, and maybe I try to find a way to save. That's when I start looking for a solution that is not pulling the lever.
Yeah.
Um, because at that point, if I pull the lever, I am I am dooming 5 people, and so I would rather try to break the train or the try to. Now, here's an interesting question. Would you? I'm tied to the tracks. The trolley is headed towards me. There are
Okay.
5 people on the other track that you can switch it to, but there's also a fat man nearby. What do you do? In that situation, your options are to pull the lever, taking less action, and kill 5 people to save me, throw the fat man in front of the train, killing one person to save all 6 people, or do you just let it run over me?
Okay. So, fuck. Just, for anybody listening, we have a document like with these problems written out, and this is not one of the ones that's written down.
No,
So,
I'm improvising here. This is jazz. This is the jazz of moral philosophy. This is why
you're very good at jazz.
there's
Just
a there's a line in The Good Place where they continually bring up the fact that everybody hates moral philosophers, and it's because of
Yeah.
crap like this. It's because it's so easy if you're thinking at all about moral philosophy, it's so easy to just pose totally paralyzing and ridiculously specific questions.
All right. So to answer your question, the ideal answer that I would like to give is that I would push the fat man on the track to save 6 people, that are on the tracks, including you,
Including me, yeah.
because that's like the least morally objectionable thing for me. However, realistically, if I'm thrown in that situation, first of all, I'm not a very big dude. I don't know if I even could push a fat man on the tracks. Uh, because we haven't dealt with the situation of, what if you try to push the fat man on the tracks and you fail, and the fat man then realizes that you just tried to kill him. Um, then what?
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that one.
But also, it's like, I don't know if I have the ability to just do that, to just throw a man on the track to save my homie. But I definitely couldn't pull the lever to kill 5 people.
Okay, good. Because I
The
was to
five,
say, my response there is almost exactly the same, except for the fact that, I'm pretty certain I could push a fat man into the path of the trolley.
oh, I'm sure.
And the assumption there is also that it would be possible for you to do it. So your intentions will always go correctly.
Yeah.
But again, it's the direct action there that's so difficult because
Yeah,
you are killing a person in that second. Like it goes from I'm not going to get this legally correct, but like negligent manslaughter kind of. It goes from that with the
you have killed a man.
to direct, not premeditated, so not first degree, but like second degree murder where you have in the heat of the moment as a crime of passion, you have pushed a person into the track and killed them by your direct action.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is
Taking
nuts.
that to court. Yeah, it's like, because the thing is that if it's the fat man trolley regularly, like, you've got 5 people on the track, you've got the fat man. If you push him off of the platform to save those 5 people, then I would say that. Nah, I'm not a lawyer. Don't take this as advice, but I feel like you'd have a pretty good case, especially like in a jury, that you were doing a greater good, and that even though it was murder, in a sense, it was for you get an ends justify the mean
Yes.
type deal.
And so
But if
continue.
But I was gonna say, like, if the trolley's only gonna hit one person, you have now just, a soul for a soul, Thanos that shit. And I don't know where you get away with that. I don't think you can get away with that.
That's true. And so the other thing is that that sort of broaches into the two main schools of moral philosophy, which is interesting, and I think we'll probably do an episode later on them. But the basic breakdown on the two schools of moral philosophy is there are deontological systems and there are utilitarian systems. Deontological is most often, like the most common example is the church. Thou shalt not kill, where there are actions and there are certain acts that you can commit that are always morally wrong, no matter what. And so that's their idea,
Yeah.
is it's never okay to lie, it's never okay to kill, it's never okay to cheat. Utilitarianism, as the name would suggest, applies utility to these decisions. So very much mercy killings are in this class, where it is depending on the amount of good that is in the world. So if you have to kill someone to save 5 other people, you're netting 4 lives there, 4 positive lives than there would have been otherwise. And so in that case, by utilitarian philosophy, you would be able to kill someone and have it be a morally correct action.
Yes.
I am more in favor of utilitarianism. At least I would like to think that I am. But of course, you get to the point where, by utilitarian philosophy, sometimes the morally correct thing to do is to murder someone. And that is something that you can't always apply in real life.
Yes.
But again, going off your point, I think, jury of your peers, you could convince them that utilitarian philosophy is the way to go, and maybe get off with, like, manslaughter or something, while still being, like...
There's no way you get away from the scot-free, but...
Exactly. But it's, like, not being imprisoned for life because of the reason that you had. Now, an interesting thing to talk about. because you said that you might not be able to push the fat man in, I think the absolute worst case scenario here is in this ridiculous fat man loved one combination clusterfuck that I've made up here. The worst case scenario here is that you attempt to push the fat man into the track. He falls, hits the lever, and so 5 people die. The fat man is alive, but you have tried to murder him. He has to live with the weight of the fact that he basically just murdered 5 people. And I am still tied to the tracks, but alive. Having to live with the fact that I just watched 5 people get mown over, and Hayne has now become a person who can be convicted of attempted murder. So just an interesting legal thing to think about. That is the worst case scenario. That's the worst thing that happens there.
Okay. Maybe not as realistic, but I think that this is a worst case scenario. I attempt to push the fat man onto the tracks. I fail to do so. He hits the switch. But instead of the trolley just hitting my loved one or the 5 people, multi-track drifting, both sides die as the trolley derails and crushes both of them, causing me to lose all 6 people and have an attempted murder charge against the fat man.
Okay, I could see that, but, obviously
that's
less
not realistic. Yeah.
We can talk about multi-track drifting with trolleys in another episode.
Tokyo Drift a train. Oh god. Okay. Let's stay focused.
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Before we move on to the next problem, just really quick, I want to say, if you all right, let's say trolley problem as you have just described, except the fat man trolley problem, except there are no witnesses, except for the person on the track. So I'm the person on the platform, you're the person on the track. I have just pushed a fat man onto the track to save people's lives. Let's simplify this as far as possible. I've pushed a fat man on the tracks to save your life. And there's no other witnesses. There's no cameras, there's nothing.
Okay.
What then? Like, I have basically just murdered a man to save you. And you have just witnessed a man be murdered in order to save your life. What then? Do you just go on living with your guilt?
I mean, I think we have to.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really an out from that. You just kind of accept that happened and like try to move on.
You never talk it again.
Never speak about it again.
Oh shit.
How was your trip to the zoo? Nothing happened. No trolleys.
No trolleys. That's for sure. The trolley system was down suspiciously.
Oh, yeah. It sounded like somebody fell in.
Yeah, that's so weird, man. I wonder how that happened. Anyway, yeah. No, okay. A quick side tangent that has nothing to do with this. This weekend I went to an Ultimate tournament, and the hotel was on a one-way road, which I forgot. So I may or may not have gone the wrong way down a one-way road.
You drove the wrong way down a one-way road?
Yep.
My
and then immediately
God.
saw cars coming at me.
That's really
Good news
funny.
is that I immediately got to turn around. But that shit, like, it was fucking 9 o'clock after playing all day. I was fucking exhausted, and there was no one-way sign, like, out of the parking lot, so I just fucking forgot.
Good for you.
Thanks.
So now we have the Hayne is a dumbass problem. If you are in a car going down a one-way road the correct way, and you see an idiot driving the wrong way, do you swerve to avoid him, potentially killing pedestrians and causing property damage, or do you hit him head on with the assumption that his insurance will have to pay for your car?
The answer is obviously you hit the car because there's just no way you fucking get away with that shit.
Of course.
But, you know, if you don't know who I am, there's no guarantee that I have insurance. In which case, you're fucked. Well, actually, both parties are fucked.
Both parties are fucked, but let's not talk about that. Anyway,
Yeah, let's not
speaking
talk about
of
that. That's silly.
cars, a very recent sort of modification to this problem, or not really a modification, but more an application of the problem, is that we are, coming into the age of more and more AI permeating our everyday lives. What with, Echo Dots and Amazon Echoes and Roombas kind of apply there. But self-driving cars have encountered a moral issue where if they have to hit, like if they are moving in such a way that they cannot stop and there are two people in front of them, the AI within the car has to make a moral decision of which person they should hit. Now the most common way I've seen this is an elderly woman or a baby. Why is the baby alone crawling through a crosswalk? Who can say? Um, but this is, it sort of brought it back into the vogue because it is a unique and modern application of this 1967 thought experiment. So your thoughts on this, Hane? Should the car hit the elderly woman or the baby?
This is gonna sound really callous, but hit the old broad. She's had her time to live.
Wow, surprisingly harsh and abrupt, but I do agree.
I mean,
Um,
all right. Let me put it a little bit more eloquently. In terms of like, if we're gonna look at this as a utilitarian stance, an elderly person, they have lived their life. They are now assumedly retired, or if they're not, they're of limited working capacity. And provide very little value to the world as a whole, and they've had a full life experience. Whereas the baby has just been born and has not had the potential, like has not had its potential realized. Um, and so anything that that baby can do in the future would be lost as a result of the car hitting the baby. Um,
so there the utilitarian value that you're trading off is no longer lives, but rather years of life, because there are two people. It's the same amount of lives, so it's a net -1, no matter who you hit. But the baby's got hopefully 80 years to live, and the woman probably, I don't know, we'll say she's 70. She's got 10 more years. Now, the variation here. What if the baby becomes a mass murderer?
well,
If you
this
allow
is
the
getting us
baby to
into a whole
live,
other.
if you allow the baby to live by hitting the elderly woman, and the baby then murders 10 people, that is a net -11 lives from the decision that you made.
Technically, the AI made it, but yeah. But here's the other thing: is that this kind of gets into a whole other moral conflict of should we let AI or like predictive evaluation where we predict like what a person will do later on in their lives. Because if you didn't know, there are already some police that are using AI to like predict who's going to commit crimes within counties and then go preemptively arrest them. Um,
Which is good because there's no pieces of media that let us know why that would be a bad idea.
yeah, yeah, absolutely nothing wrong with that. I see only good things can come from a computer that's not very advanced. You know, picking out who it should arrest. I'm sure that there's no biases there. But anyway, yeah, because you can't predict, I, if the baby's gonna grow up to be a mass murderer, you've been gifted the uh, insight of an oracle, and you know that the baby's gonna become a mass murderer, then net loss of only -1 if you hit the baby. But there's no way of knowing that, so it really doesn't matter. Now, other side of this. Say perhaps the baby's going to become a mass murderer, but the elderly woman. Fuck, I don't have an equivalent
Already
thing that
is a mass murder.
mass murderer
No.
is on her. Hold on. The baby's going to become a mass murderer, but the grandma is going to murder the baby. And so, if you choose to do nothing, the grandma will still murder the baby. But if you murder the baby, the grandma will kill no one, but you also will have killed the baby.
I think
And then if you
that's
kill
the
the grandma,
situation. That's the two-rail drift. You have to kill both. To keep the number of killers in the world down, you have to kill both of them so that one of them, or so that neither one of them can become a killer. And you are the
if
only
you
killer.
I think that that's a pretty simple problem, in all honesty. Sure, you could make an argument that, like, if it's your grandma, you know, like, maybe you have an emotional connection, you'd want your grandma to survive. But, honestly, knowing my grandparents, and, like, knowing if I was the old person, like, I would rather... Like, if I were the old person in the situation, I'd try and save the baby if the car was, you know, careening directly towards it, you know, in our two different lanes of traffic.
I agree. I also think that, you know, there's something to be said about the fact that the old person could survive. I don't think there's any situation where a baby is hit by a car and comes out of it even a little bit alright. I think maybe you hit an elderly woman, you get lucky, she's got a metal hip, nothing, like, hugely damaging is done, maybe she's
Got a fucking
bedridden.
vibranium hip.
Maybe she's bedridden, or maybe, like, best case scenario here, the elderly woman gets hit by the car, and she is injured, but not critically. She goes to the hospital, is confined to bed rest, and while she's on bed rest, she eventually dies peacefully in her sleep. That's the best scenario for me, is that way the baby lives, the elderly woman lives long enough to say her goodbyes, and assumedly, at this point, since she's elderly, she has made her preparations for her death. Hopefully she's got a will drawn up. She knows which of her family... She's gonna make amends with her estranged sister. I don't know. But, I don't think there's any situation where you could justify hitting the baby. Even...
No, baby?
No. Even if the car is headed towards the baby and the AI has to switch its course to hit the elderly woman, I still think that's the proper course of action.
Yeah. Okay. Now, speaking of vehicles and deaths as a result, I want to briefly go back. One of the attempted modifications of the trolley problem that I thought was dumb but wanted to include here was the airplane example, where essentially it is you're on an airplane, you're the pilot of an airplane that is failing. It's going to crash. And you can choose to either have it crash into a city and a population, or you can have it crash in the middle of a field. And I thought that was just a fucking stupid example because there is absolutely no reason to crash your plane into a city if you have the option to not do that.
I agree. If you retain any control over the airplane, enough to pilot it anywhere, you could probably find somewhere better to put it. You gotta put the plane in the ice.
Yep.
Just anywhere. It shouldn't also be that hard. Based on the fact that, like, if your airplane is failing, it's probably an engine, which means you're basically just falling.
You're not falling, or fuck, you're not flying, you're falling with style.
Yeah. Exactly. But,
Anyway.
I don't understand the intention of that one. The only thing I can think of is that was, like, the first... Or, like, maybe that was something that somebody came up with
That was like the
separately.
first attempt on a brainstorm.
Exactly, is they were like, hey, we should think about trading lives and stuff. But it just comes off as really stupid because it's if you have the option, anyone, no one can argue that you should leave the plane going where it's going.
And the other reason that I want to bring this up is so that I can just give you a great quote from Mark Wahlberg. That is, quote, "If I was on that plane with my kids, it wouldn't have went down like it did. There would have been a lot of blood in the first class cabin, and then me saying, 'Okay, we're gonna land somewhere safely. Don't worry.'" And for this reason, Mark Wahlberg thinks that he could have stopped 9/11.
At least one
Um,
plane.
at least one. But I find that really fucking funny because that is literally just the, I don't know, a fucking epitome of rip to them, but I'm different.
Of course, of course. Um,
But yeah, I just want to share that fun fact.
which it brings up an interesting point where, in the airplane example, if you cannot pilot an airplane,
If you're just a passenger, the pilot's dead, the plane is careening into a city, but there's a convenient field nearby.
but do you have enough of a grasp on how to steer a plane to make that call? Or do you, because that's the thing is, I haven't been in a cockpit recently, and I do not have a pilot's license. I don't know that I would be bold enough to take the controls of a plane and to try to steer it somewhere less populated. Because what if you make it worse?
It's a very good point that you make. However, my thought is that like if your current course is going to take you into a city, you might as well try. And I'm going to say this as an act of hubris. If the plane's going down and, I'm sitting in the cockpit, well, first of all, I'd say, is anybody here have a pilot's license? And when the, screaming and crying doesn't stop and nobody says, I know, I'm gonna try. Because I've played a single flight sim in my life. I'm sure it can't be that hard. I say this with heavy sarcasm because
I
I have no
too,
sarcastic
I
tone.
too have played a flight sim, in VR, so I basically have my pilot's license.
Yeah, basically. So I think that I would at least try. Because I don't see how I could make it worse.
Yeah, and it's
If
no one's
if
gonna
we
fault
were,
you for it. Also, nobody's gonna be
yeah,
like, "Oh, this
yeah,
idiot."
because we'll all be dead.
Yeah, well, also, but like, even if they figure out what happened, like, I don't know, they recover the black box from the plane, and they're like, "Why did this idiot try to fly a plane?" I don't think anybody can realistically say like, "Man, that guy who tried to steer a plane away from a city sure was a dolt." Like, it's just there's no real downside to it.
Yeah. Now, on the other side, let's say the plane's headed towards an open field. The pilot is dead, and there's the potential that you can land the plane on this runway in a field. But if you do nothing, the plane will crash in this field, killing only the passengers of the plane. But if you try to steer it, you could potentially safely land the plane, which is literally the hardest part and something that we haven't really built AI consistently to do yet, to my knowledge. Or you could accidentally steer it into the airport or the city and then cause more deaths.
Yeah,
What do you do in that situation?
I think I'd leave it alone.
I think I'd leave it alone.
Unless, like, if I had ATC in my ears, maybe. Like, if they could, like, describe the process enough to. I assume that they are somewhat prepared for that eventuality. And again, that's why there's co pilots. But we're assuming,
Yeah.
like, this is edge case. Both. And nobody on the plane has any idea what they're doing. And you have to sit down and try to figure it out. I assume that ATC control or air traffic controllers, because I don't want to be redundant there, air traffic controllers, they probably know how to explain to a civilian how to not land a plane, but how to crash a plane as with as
Safely as
little damage
possible.
as possible. Yeah. Well, and that's when you get into the fact that they have like landing foam.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that that would help if you're on like a goddamn jumbo jet and you're trying to get someone with no experience to land it. But you figure in that case, like, you get in contact with them and you just try to figure out any way you can to make this less lethal. And maybe you don't end up saving anybody, but at least you tried.
Yeah. You get brownie points for trying. Okay. So I think that this is the last serious trolley problem that we have. Um, but I like this question a lot because I think it's interesting. I don't like it because moral philosophy is bullshit. But it is called the prisoner's trolley problem. Um, and this is from a Tumblr post by a user named Trace Excalibur. Um, Basically, if you're not familiar with either the prisoner's dilemma or the trolley problem, it's a combination of the two. And you should be familiar with the trolley problem because we literally just went over it. But the prisoner's dilemma is essentially two convicts have committed a crime, but there's no evidence yet, and the police are trying to get either one of them to talk. And they give both of the prisoners a plea bargain and say, if you snitch, then we'll give you this, like, we'll let you go free, or we'll give you some reward to lessen your sentence. And so if one of them takes it, they get the plea bargain, and the other one goes to jail. If they, if neither of them take it, then they both go free, I believe. Or if both of them take it, then neither gets the plea deal because they both talked. I don't think I explained that properly, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah. I mean, you got enough of it.
Anyway, um, so the prisoner's trolley problem is there are two trolleys full of your loved ones on a track going towards another loved one that is stuck like on a track. In the middle, there are three civilians that is of importance to no one in this situation. You are on one side, and you can pull a switch to divert the trolley to kill the three people in the middle that isn't your loved one. But there's somebody on the other side that can do the same thing, is in the same scenario. If they pull the lever, then the three people will die, but their loved one will be saved. If they don't pull the lever, then their loved one will die on the track, and the three people in the middle will be saved. If both sides pull the trolley, or pull the switch, sorry, the trolleys will crash in the middle, killing the three innocents, plus the trolleys full of each person's loved ones. But the one person on the side will die. So your best case scenario is, well, the best case scenario for either single person is you pull the switch and the other doesn't, because then all of your loved ones survive. Worst case scenario, you both pull it and everyone dies. What do you do?
So in the scenario where we both pull them, 13 people die.
Yes.
It's five of your loved ones who are on the trolley, 5 of their loved ones who are on the trolley, and the 3 random bystanders who are in the middle of the track.
Yes.
So, I'm assuming also it's not included in the description of this one, but assumedly neither person can see the trolleys or see the other person.
Yes.
Because
they cannot
otherwise
communicate.
that will influence your decision. In this scenario, I would not pull the lever. I would let the trolley full of 5 loved ones hit one loved one to keep the most people alive. Because the risking, in this case, if you pull the lever, you're going to kill 3 innocent bystanders in exchange for the life of one loved one. But in doing so, you also put the lives of 5 more loved ones at risk. So my thought
Yes.
there is that just to keep the most of your loved ones alive, you should not pull the lever.
That's my thought.
And I actually don't think that any situation, I think that the best case situation here is that neither of us pull the lever. Because if neither people pull the lever, the least lives are lost. It's only 2 people dying.
Yes.
And if we're talking from a utilitarian standpoint, that is actually the best case scenario.
Yeah.
If for you personally, if you really are that selfish that you're gonna put 5 loved ones at risk and kill 3 people just to keep 1 person alive, that person has to be, first of all, really, really important, like much more important than any of the other ones. And
Yeah,
also,
that's what I was gonna say.
it's difficult to justify that morally.
Mm-hmm. It. I don't think that this is the right term, but I think it's a little bit of like survivor bias, where let's say you pull the lever, but the other person doesn't, and all of your loved ones, all 6 of your loved ones survive. Well, you're going to be like, well, I made the right choice because the most of the people I cared about survived. But if both people pull the lever, then you have killed the most of your loved, like you've killed 5 of your loved ones, and then there's no way for you to justify like you'll have to live with that.
Yes.
So I agree. I think that under normal circumstances, like all my relationships being equal, I would have to just let the one person on the track die for the sake of the others. But where it gets a little dicey is like when you're assigning like who would be on the track, who would be in the car, and all of that.
When you decide who is the most important to you and whose life is worth risking the lives of 5 of your other loved ones.
Yeah. And that's sort of that would be that might be an easier comparison for us to make if we had 6 people that we cared about a lot. And I'm not saying that we don't, but it's like neither of us are married. Neither of us are dating.
Sorry. We don't have 6 loved ones.
Yeah. Like yeah, if we want to add some spice to this, let's say that I'm gonna ask this question to you. So like, let's say I'm tied to the track, and then your family is in the car. So like your brother's mom and dad. I think that it's a pretty obvious pick to leave the track as it is and just take me out and leave your family.
Yes, I would have to do that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Again,
Same
because
pretty much goes for me.
It's because there are 5 people that I marginally care about versus you.
Yes.
If it's 5 random people, it's easy enough for me to just say, oh yeah, I'll take them out instead of you. But it's so difficult to justify even people that you marginally care about. If it's like, oh, it's your friend from middle school, like, who you haven't really talked to. But it's like, if you put 5 of your friends from middle school who you don't really talk to anymore versus one person who's super important to you, it's still really hard to kill those 5 people because you know who they are. Because it's a more personal connection. You have to put their lives at risk.
Yeah. And this is literally this is like the apex of the prisoners, the trolley problem. Like, I can't think of a more awful version. Because I think you're absolutely right. Like, even just like a level of familiarity makes it so much harder to risk. Because 5 randos just in a car, you don't give a shit. You don't like they're essentially NPCs. And I don't want to get into that debate, but it's like those are 5 NPCs to you versus they are 5 characters or people that you know and how it would directly impact if those 5 people were to cease to exist.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's the other thing that's really interesting and why I think it is the apex is that there's no situation where you come out of this feeling good about the decision you made.
Oh yeah, no.
I feel like Fat Man, like, you can justify. You can be like, okay, I had to kill him. Like, I feel bad, but I had to kill that guy. I had to take direct action. I had to kill that guy so that these 5 other people could stay alive. Like, you can justify that. Or the other way, you can say, those 5 people, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I am unwilling to become, like, I couldn't become a murderer to save them, and that's not my fault. Here, someone's dying, and they're either close to you, or you've risked people close to you to kill them. And there is no situation where you come out of that looking like a hero or feeling all right about yourself, no matter what.
Yeah.
And that is why I believe that this is the apex of the trolley problem.
Yeah. And also, I don't think I said this earlier, but in the Fat Man problem, where there's 5 people on the track, and pushing the Fat Man on would kill them, I don't think I would do it, because there are 5 randos, and in that sense, I'm not willing to make myself a murderer for 5 people I don't know. If it was 5 loved ones on the track, yeah, I would probably push that guy on there. But, that's the thing, is that it's like, I don't think that I'm willing to directly attribute myself to murder for people I don't know. And maybe that makes me a bad person. I don't know.
It's difficult to assess. Now, the final detour we will make is the fact that obviously, being such a cultural phenomenon as the trolley problem is, most people have likely at least heard of it. Even if they don't understand like exactly what it is, they've heard of the trolley problem. And again, to the point where, The Good Place has a full episode based on it. But people have understandably turned to some pretty interesting and hilarious jokes about ridiculous ways that you can mutate it into ridiculous decisions. So, and you know what? They're right. It is kind of ridiculous, because once you start manipulating variables in the problem, it's hard to figure out when to stop, and you hit a point where you're actually just making something ridiculous and so far, like, so distant from reality that it's not really even applicable in a moral situation. But with that said, they're really funny, and so I would like to read a few of them.
All right, hold on. Which website are we on?
The first one I'm going to read is from McSweeney's .net, and it is called The Suicide Note.
Hold on. The author, so the full article is called "The Lesser Known Trolley Problem Variations" by Kaya York.
Yeah, and so the suicide note is: there's an out-of-control trolley speeding towards a worker. You have the ability to pull a lever and change the trolley's path so it hits a different worker. The first worker has an intended suicide note in his back pocket, but it's in the handwriting of the second worker. The second worker wears a t-shirt that says, "Please hit me with a trolley," but the shirt is borrowed from the first worker. Which, do you pull the lever or not? In this case, obviously, it is a manipulation of if a person actually wants to die. I mean, can you avoid the temptation of hitting a dude with a trolley who is wearing a shirt that says, "Please hit me with a trolley"?
Okay, so here's my thought in this situation. I think I would I don't think I'd pull the lever at all, because I'm not gonna get involved with people I don't know. However, in the spirit of the question, I would pull the lever to hit the guy that says, "Please hit me with a trolley," because I don't think that there's a way for me to know that the guy has a suicide note or intent of suicide note, and also, I mean, he's kind of saying, "I want to be hit with a trolley," and that's a little bit more reasonable to notice.
Yeah. Well, see, but we're assuming that you have prior knowledge of this.
Yeah. So instead of it being like a random person, you're like a trolley control you're a trolley conductor, and you have to pick one or the other, and you know these guys. Let's just
There's no way to rationalize this, Hane. There's no
there's
way
no
to make this a sensible thing that we can comment on. It's just something that we have to read and laugh at. Um. So anyway,
I
do you want to read one?
uh let me I'm gonna read the first one. Or sorry, it's called The Cancer Caper. It's the second one on this article. Just because it's so ridiculous and convoluted that I just find it really funny.
Ah, yes.
Alright. The Cancer Caper. There's an out-of-control trolley speeding towards four workers. Three of them are cannibalistic serial killers. One of them is a brilliant cancer researcher. You have the ability to pull the lever and change the trolley's path so it just hits one person. She's a brilliant cannibalistic serial killing cancer researcher who only kills lesser cancer researchers. 14% of the researchers are Nazi sympathizers, and 25% don't use turning signals when they drive. Speaking of which, in this world, Hitler's still alive, but he's dying of cancer.
I think this one is arguably more tricky.
Really? There's so many more variables. How could it be more
There are
tricky?
quite a few. Yes.
All right. So first, first of all, let's address the fucking merits of three of them are cannibalistic serial killers and one is a brilliant cancer researcher. We're getting back to what we said earlier with the baby that's gonna grow up to become a serial killer.
Yes.
The alternative is a brilliant cannibalistic serial killing cancer researcher. So
But the important part there is that the brilliant cannibalistic serial killing cancer researcher only kills and eats lesser cancer researchers, and then it goes on to specify that the cancer researchers in general are very bad. 14% of them are Nazi sympathizers, and 25% don't use turning signals when they drive.
Well, I think that given the context that Hitler's still alive, therefore I think that we can assume that there was a different ending to World War II, which would explain why we have 14% of these cancer researchers being Nazi sympathizers, since they would have gone into the cancer research industry in order to save their Führer.
Probably.
I
Yes.
But also, since it says that she only kills lesser cancer researchers, I think that honestly, you just let the trolley go and hit the one track.
I agree.
Because, since she only kills lesser researchers, that means that if they are less effective than she is, then, it's not that much of a loss because she can do whatever they can better. But if there are better cancer researchers out there, then she wouldn't, kill them. And so cancer research would be done.
That's true. Another thing to think about is that if you keep the thing on track, it kills what is presumably a less important cancer researcher, but it also wipes out three cannibalistic serial killers who have no such limit as the brilliant cannibalistic serial killing researcher, cancer researcher, because the brilliant cannibalistic serial killing cancer researcher only kills lesser cancer researchers. Meanwhile, these three cannibalistic serial killers, they don't care. They will kill whoever they want, and perhaps they could kill a normal cancer researcher who is actually more brilliant than the brilliant cannibalistic serial killing cancer researcher. So I think the potential there, what you're doing is you're wiping out one cancer researcher and three cannibals who are going to wreak havoc and just eat whoever the hell they want. And you are leaving alive by inaction. By inaction, you are leaving alive a person who theoretically is netting negative, but not in an important way.
The negative. So I see this as like, all right, let's even the playing field a little bit here. Let's say that the cancer researching cannibalistic serial killer doesn't have such a limit as the other three. It's still the amount of people that one cannibalistic serial killer could the amount of damage that they could do is going to be far less than 3 of them. So
And in the
even
meantime, they're also researching cancer.
yes,
So they will
which
probably
and
produce
if
a positive result while they're producing this negative result.
yeah, so and then also you have to consider that since they're a cancer researcher and they're a cannibalistic serial killer, they're going to have to divert their time between 2 different avenues, which would then lead to a lesser rate of serial killing compared to other non-committed cannibalistic serial killers.
Oh, for sure, especially 3 of them.
Also, we can just go kill Hitler if he's still alive and dying of cancer.
Well, maybe,
Before,
or we can just negligently let him die. Also,
yeah,
it doesn't specify
whether
the
cancer would
brilliant
be cured.
cannibalistic serial killing cancer researcher. It does not specify whether or not she is a Nazi sympathizer, or in
It only says that
fact,
there's a 14%.
yes, 14% of those researchers. I'm going to assume that she is not a Nazi sympathizer, just because it fits the narrative better.
Mm-hmm. But also, could she be one of the 25% that doesn't use a turning signal when they drive? Because I would say that that is an equally awful offense.
Again, I'm going to assume that since they have to specify, and since they do specify that in the passage afterwards, she is not included in those statistics.
Okay.
Um, yeah, wow.
I'm glad that this is the one that we started talking about, because this is what I hoped this podcast would become.
Yes, it's just us putting a ridiculous amount of thought into something that really could not matter less at all.
All right, and that's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to the ramblings of these 2 madmen. And if you enjoyed the episode, please leave a comment below asking us any questions you'd like us to discuss, or just any comments in general. We're going to try and put out episodes weekly, and that's it.